Hello, Battletech fans. Welcome back. It's been a little while. Apologies for that. Life and work kind of got in the way recently over the last few months. But recently, I've been getting more games in, and it's really kind of rekindled me trying to get more time, table time with the game and rolling some dice and blasting up some mechs. So we're back. I wanted to come back as I've been over this couple months that I've not been able to record. I've been thinking about a lot of topics that I want to talk to you guys about and have conversations with you. And I've been writing those down. And one of them that I wanted to start a conversation with today was, frankly, a question that I've been asked several times. I was surprised at first the number of times I was asked this by newer players coming into the game. But as I thought about it a little bit more, it started to make a lot more sense. And that question is, are there faction-specific rules for Battletech? And so, like I said, I got asked this question pretty frequently from a lot of the newer players that are, hey, I see this, it looks really cool, I'd like to give it a shot, but they've never played it before. And they're not returning players, but they've never replayed it before. So, as I thought about it, it made a lot of sense because a lot of modern games do have faction-specific rules for the different factions that you might play. So I think it's a very natural question. So, and they're asking this because they want to get into the game. They don't want to pick a faction that doesn't match their play style, or they're interested in maybe in a more powerful faction, or they're interested in the heavy weapons faction as opposed to the speed or the glass hammer faction, or what have you. And so they don't want to make a wrong pick, right? And so totally understandable question. And again, like I said, I think this is born out of a lot of games out there nowadays, modern games. You pick a faction and because you like the color scheme or you like the rules, and you on some level get a little bit locked in because those rules or that scheme or that play style really resonates with you. And so the question that I get posed again is, does this translate into Battletech? And in a word, no, not really. And a little bit of a qualified no, but in general, the answer to this is no. There are no real, what I would call, faction-specific rules for Battletech. Now, there's houses, the great houses and merc factions and clans all have deep, deep backstory. Battletech is one of those games that's been around for literally decades. It's got lots of supplements published for it. There's lots of lore out there. There's lots of rule books. There's lots of novels. There's all sorts of story on each one of these factions, but it's really mostly for flavor. But in terms of concrete rules, like in 40K, like Dark Angels get the plasma weapons, maybe they get a discount on plasma weapons, or Imperial Fists get bolter drills, and they can double tap twice on their bolters if they stand still, and what have you, things like that. There's nothing really like that exists in Battletech. So the mechs you pick are pretty standard across all the factions. Now, usually there's something like the time periods where, like, okay, if you're playing in early succession wars, you're not going to have access to clan tech, but that's not really a rule for the factions so much as those factions just don't exist in that time frame. But given all of that, then the lore and the backstory does somewhat dictate what factions are known for. So like I said, all of these factions, the mercs or the great houses, they all have this flavor, all this rich history in the lore that they draw from. And you don't strictly have to adhere to that lore, but it makes your games probably a little bit more flavorful, and it's like a little bit of a self-imposed maybe list building criteria, or the types of mechs or the types of forces that those particular factions might take. That totally exists. Like, if you go into the lore, you can go on Sarna, you can go into Wikipedia, you can go into any of the books, you can find details about, hey, these factions were kind of more known for taking this type of mech versus that type of mech. So, like, for examples, the Fed Sons, they're big believer in combined arms and conventional warfare. They tend to do total war. They've got lots of tanks and infantry as well as mechs, and they tend to use a lot of ballistic weapons. Like, they're really fond of autocannons, it seems. The Lyran Commonwealth, like House Steiner. There's some internet memes on this, and I'm sure if you go into any of the Facebook groups, you'll commonly see every week, you'll probably see something about the House Steiner Assault Lance, or the House Steiner Recon Lance, which is all assault mechs. But joking aside, the Lyran Commonwealth is generally kind of known as they tend to use bigger mechs. They tend to use a lot of assault mechs. The heavier mechs are really kind of the bread and butter of that from a lore perspective. And then like the Capellan Confederation tends to favor good multi-role mechs like the Crusader or Thunderbolt or Wolverine, and mechs that have, and I'm talking all 30-25 area here, folks, if that isn't obvious, but mechs that have, like, for the Capellan Confederation, mechs that have weapons at most ranges and can fill more than one role. They're kind of known for that. Now, when you get into something like the clans, I'm going to tweak what I just said a little bit, and I've not played clans a lot, but I've been doing a little bit of research on this topic because I wanted to make sure that I was speaking truthfully. And if there's any veterans out there that want to correct me, please feel free to correct me in the comments. But this is my understanding, is that there's something in the clans that if you end up playing clans, you can look up things like clan honor rules or clan rules of engagement or clan ritual duel or Zellbringen, Zell Briggen. Let me spell that again. Zellbringen, Zellbrigen. And that's kind of like clan duel, like dueling, knights jousting, dueling, kind of honor-bound, sort of traditional combat amongst mechs. And there's kind of rules around that. Those rules don't apply to tanks or infantry or elementals, only to clan mechs and for clan honor. And clan honor is a whole different topic that we can talk about. You go onto YouTube, you go onto Sarna or any of these other places, you can look up clan honor and it'll tell you all about it. There's rules of engagement that clanners use, that, clan mech pilots, which are really kind of the top of the heap in clan society, military society. And I don't know if the using clan honor rules is considered mandatory or if it's something that you have to do. It's probably one of those things, like just like everything else, it's a conversation with your opponent. But there are rules along the lines of kind of faction specific stuff, some of the stuff for clans. So some examples are like in common with every other unit in the clan Ghost Bear, in that time, units within an alpha galaxy receive +1 modifier to any dice roll on the random weight class tables determined star or binary trinary type. So that really has to do with when you're in a campaign and you're kind of rolling up, hey, what are my forces for that campaign? Based on the faction you pick, you're going to receive modifiers on these tables that you roll on to see what mechs you're going to play. So another one is like Alpha Galaxies receive +1 bonus to initiative rolls. The command of each star within an Alpha Galaxy may choose to deploy any Omni-Mech in any configuration rather than determining their mech randomly. So there's things like this that exist, and those are references from the Field Manual Clans and the Field Manual Updates books. So you can take a look at those. But to me, as far as I know, that's the closest thing to like hard and fast rules for faction-specific stuff. And that has more to do with, if you're coming from 40K, that has more to do with like force organization, or if you're from Age of Sigmar, from War Scroll update, or War Scrolls, or things like that. So not so much like that faction gets those things, but more of like, okay, if you're going to build a list for a campaign, it kind of tweaks things a little bit there. So again, not so much in Battletech are you looking at something that's got like rules for your battle mechs get a +1 on laser weapons because there happen to be house blah. As far as I know, and veterans out there, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's anything out there. Now, like I said, each faction tends to be described as having their own tactics and organizations and mech preferences in the fluff, and that's totally a legit thing. That's true. All the fluff kind of says, hey, these houses tend towards these sorts of things, but that shouldn't. On the flip side, that shouldn't stop you from taking the mechs that you want in your force. Like, if you're House Steiner, there is no reason why you can't take a non-assault mech. No one's going to look down on you. It's like, it's a thing. Those mechs are all out there because military contractors or suppliers build these things hoping that people will buy them. Some are, yes, commissioned by the great houses. All mechs end up in a Merc Lance at some point anyway, so you can craft a narrative, or you can craft a reason for any mech to be in any force. Try to stay within the timelines, I would say, of course, but that's generally kind of the only rule or the sliders that I would put on that. So if you want more details on like how to construct a lance, I put out a video earlier called How to Build a Lance, and that will kind of show you like, how to do the points and whatnot. But they're really, you should you should be feel fully empowered to go by sort of the lore ways of building alliance in terms of like this faction takes this type of mech more often than others, but don't let that stop you. If you have your heart set on a mech, don't let that stop you. Um, and I think that's it for the main topic. But I think what I don't want to leave it on just information. I want to start a conversation, and I want to leave this topic with a question. So, and let's discuss this in the comments. Is this a good thing that there's no factions? There's no real faction rules for BattleTech. Let's accept that as an axiom. Is that a good thing? Why or why not? Is it better that there isn't? Or are you like, man, this is like a missed opportunity. Why doesn't BattleTech do something like this? My hot take, this is a good thing. Every war game that I play generally has power creep with every faction that's released. And that's it's easy to complain about that in the multiple war games that we play. It's really a hard war gaming, and war game balance is a really hard thing to get right. And so my hat's off to any game designer that designs a game that has any game, but in particular when you introduce faction specific rules, that makes it really hard to sort of balance the variations and like the points cost and whatnot. And that's precisely why we have battle value too, right? It's like that's a pretty decent approximation of balance when the playing field is level and you take the mechs that you feel like you like and you roll dice and you have a great time with great people. So I feel like it's a good thing. I actually really like that. I like that I am able to take anything and I can self-select on the mechs that I can take based on the faction that I picked or the lore. But what do you think? What's your thoughts on, is faction-specific rules, is not having faction-specific rules a good thing for BattleTech? Also, have you made your own faction-specific rules? And if so, what were they?